And we know that side A is 2, so little a is 2. And I know little b is 3. Okay, so we need to start by finding, we have to start by finding side C, because that's the only angle we know. So we're going to start here. So when you set up the law of cosines, what I like to do first is rewrite it using the variables, putting the variables in the right position. So because I'm looking for C, then my equation needs to begin with C squared. So this is going to start off C squared, and it's going to end with the cosine of C. Whatever I start with, I have to end with. Okay? So the other two sides in this triangle are A and B. So then it's going to equal the other two sides squared. So it's the A squared and the B squared minus 2 times AB times cosine of C. So that's how you're going to set it up. So now take everything you know. Now using the law of cosines to find a side is very simple. So go ahead and substitute everything you know, because you know little a, you know little b, and you know angle C. So when we type this in our calculators, we have C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus 2 times 2 times 3 times the cosine of 60 degrees. And 60 is on our unit circle, so we're not going to get a decimal, because the cosine of 60 is one of our common trig ratios to find. So in your calculators, you're just going to simply just type the whole thing in there, just like that, straight across. And if you type it in correctly, you should get 7. C squared equals 7. So now to find C, we need to take the square root of 7. Now, if you're using one of the yellow calculators, it's just going to say the square root of 7. But if you want that answer as a decimal, right above the enter key, so if you're using one of the yellow calculators, right above the enter key, there's 2 triangles that are converted to a decimal. All right, but C, the square root of 7, is a decimal, and it's approximately 2.646. That would be my answer for C. Let me write off to the side what we're looking for. We're looking for little c, which we figured out. And then we also need to figure out the measure of angle A, and we need to find the measure of angle B. So that would be C. So now I know C. We can't switch to the law of sines even though we have a pair. We have to stick with the law of cosines to find our next angle. And then after we find the second angle, we can use triangle sum to find the third angle. So now let's find angle A. So the first thing I want to do is rewrite this using the variables that we're trying to find. So because I'm looking for angle A, I can stay with the law of cosines the way it's written originally, because notice that this is set up already. It already starts with A and ends with A. So I don't need to rewrite this and rearrange my variables because I'm trying to find angle A. Now, if I were to try to find angle B, then I would need to write this as B squared equals A squared plus C squared minus 2AC cosine B. But we're trying to find A. So we're just going to type in or write in everything we know. We know everything except capital A. That's what we're trying to find right now. So let's go ahead and type in what we know. So we know little a is 2. Little b is 3. We just figured out that little c is 2.646 squared. And then that's minus 2 times 3 times 2.646. And then we have the cosine of A. So using the law of cosines to find an angle, we have to solve it like an equation. So it's a little bit trickier. We have to chunk it up in pieces. So what you cannot do, this is the biggest mistake, you can't just type this whole thing in your calculator. That's not how the order of operations, that's not how it works. Okay, so what you want to do is break this up into 3 pieces. So figure out this number. And then you need to move to figuring out this. Just that, 3 squared plus 2.646 squared. Figure that number out. And then you're going to multiply these 3 numbers together. So we have to solve it that way because it's different. We have something being multiplied. So this purple piece and this green piece, we can't just do those together. So pick up your calculator. Well, we don't need a calculator for 2 squared. We know that's 4. Now type what I have underlined in purple. Type 3 squared plus 2.646 squared. So I'm typing in 3 squared plus 2.646 squared. Yeah, so 16.001. Does everyone see that? All right, bring down the subtraction sign. Now multiply 2 times 3 times 2.646. So 2 times 3 times 2.646. So that would be minus 15.876 cosine A. Okay, this is being multiplied by the cosine. So just as if this said 8 equals 3 minus 2x, you wouldn't be able to subtract the 3 and the 2x because the 2 is being multiplied, right? Going back to algebra 1. So we have to treat this the same. We have to subtract the 16.001 from both sides and then divide both sides by negative 15.876. So let's take 4 minus 16.001. Type that in your calculator. And that gives you a negative 12.001 equals negative 15.876 cosine angle A. Now we divide. We have to divide out that negative 15. So divide both sides by negative 15.876. So type this in your calculator right here. And you should get 0.756. So we have 0.756 equals the cosine of angle A. So the inverse cosine of 0.756 is going to tell you the measurement of angle A. So go ahead and type in the inverse, because if you're looking for something on the inside, we need to use the inverse. So you would get 40.887. Who got 40.887? Okay. So now that we know two angles, the third angle, we can just do triangle sum. So go ahead and do triangle sum to find angle B. So the measure of angle B, and I'll write that at the top. A lot of cosines just takes a lot of space. So the measurement of angle B is going to equal, so I'm way here, I'm at the top of the screen. It's going to equal 180 minus 60 minus 40.887. And if you type that in your calculator, you should get that angle B is equal to 79.106. Nope, that's not right, because I rounded it differently. Hold on. 180 minus, let me type it in to be sure. $79.113. Okay, any questions? Okay, law of cosines takes a lot of time, but I want to make sure we have a couple of days to review, so we need to keep moving forward here. So we're going to do a triangle. We're going to start example 3. No, we'll be able to finish it. Let's go ahead and get started with example 3. All right, go ahead and draw out example 3. So we have a triangle where we know all 3 sides, and we have to find all 3 angles. So as far as difficulty, this means that we're going to have to do the law of cosines twice. And we're going to have to solve it out. And then the third time, we can just use triangle sums. So I always start with the first letter in the alphabet, which if I'm using D, E, F, I'm going to start by finding D. So let's rewrite this using the variables that we have. So if I'm trying to find angle D, I need to start with angle D, and I'm going to end with the cosine of capital D. And in the middle, I'm using the other two, so E and F. So equals E squared plus F squared minus 2EF times the cosine of angle D. Go ahead and write in everything that we know. And we're going to solve this out for all 3 angles. So 4 squared equals 3 squared plus 6 squared and again you're going to do this piece, then you're going to do 3 squared plus 6 squared, and then 2 times 3 times 6. So you can't, this is like the biggest mistake, because you know I've been teaching for a long time, is students will say, okay, I'm going to subtract the 45 and 36 and get a 9. You cannot do that because they're not like terms. This 36 is being multiplied by the cosine of D. So you can't subtract the 45 and 36. That's not how that works. We have to subtract the 45 from 16 and then divide by negative 36. So 16 minus 45 is negative 29. That equals negative 36 cosine angle D. And then we divide both sides by negative 36. So you have 29 over 36 equals the cosine of angle D. So to find angle D, you're going to type in, and I would just leave this as a fraction. I would just type in the inverse cosine of 29 over 36. So type that in to get your angle. You should get 36.336. So we have to do the log of cosine again to find E. And I just do them in alphabetical order. So I'll pause for a second before because I have to erase all of that, of course, because I don't have space. So now we're going to go back and find angle E. So let's set it up. So if I'm looking for E, I'm going to start with little e and end with the cosine of capital E. So E squared equals D squared plus F squared minus 2DF times the cosine of E. Go ahead and type in everything you know. So I know 3 squared equals 4 squared plus 6 squared minus 2 times 4 times 6 cosine of E. So I'm going to give you a second to see if you can find that answer by yourself, if you can solve it out. If you have angle E and you want me to check your answer, raise your hand and I'll look and see if I got the same answer for E. But I see here, of course, where it's not. Oh. So that's why. Yep. So something close to 26. Did you get something close to 26? If you got something close to 26, I agree. Let's go ahead and work through it together. Headache. Okay. So we have 9 equals, and then I just put the 4 squared plus 6 squared in my calculator. And I got 52 minus, that's a 48, cosine of angle E. And then I'm subtracting 52 from both sides. 9 minus 52 is negative 43. And then we divide by negative 48. So in your calculator, to find E, you need to type in the inverse cosine. And if it's a simple fraction, I just leave it as a fraction. 43 over 48. And if you type that in, you should get that angle E is 26. 26.384 degrees. Now, we don't have to do law of cosines to find the third one, because when we know 2, the third one is easiest. So take 180, and subtract angle D and angle E. So take 180 minus 36.336 minus 26.384. So if you know 2 angles, to find the third, you just use triangle sum. You should get 117.28. And that is the law of cosines. So we are on example 3. We need to get to example 6, because we haven't talked about word problems. So we might skip over example 4 tomorrow and just hit our 2 word problems. All right, homework 15 is due today. You can also turn it in tomorrow for full credit. And homework 16 is over the law of cosines.